So, guilt and shame. Yeah, well, shame is, one of the lowest emotions we can have, and it tends to be like if someone's like predominantly in shame, that's a very destructive energy field, an extremely destructive energy field where one would be basically self-destructing and projecting extremely negatively into the world and having very, very dark thoughts. The shame of not being worth anything, and possibly one would be getting to places of suicidal thoughts or very, very dark and negative thoughts. So that would be what one is very, very cut off from the light of consciousness. And guilt and shame, they're very, very close cousins. Or they're probably often for people, there can be distinct levels or emotional levels as a set point for a person's consciousness, but they are, amongst the lowest you can get to, if that's the predominant underlying emotional. So in these very, very dark energy fields, why is it the dark energy field? Well, it's a dark energy field because of the reservoir. People who have these dark states are see, it's like it's like when you're in the dark, and everyone has experienced this to some level when they've had these more spiritual states or enlightened states, even if briefly, and then have been in these states of like shame and guilt, or heavy darkness or depression or suicidal thoughts, is that it's like there's no light there, and the thoughts are equally extremely negative. Now, the major thought form that symbolizes the energy vibration of guilt is the requirement for punishment. Now, in truth, if we take it up into a more esoteric plane, in truth, there's only oneness. So whatever is acted out, seemingly in the world of duality for the separate consciousness, it really, on a certain level, it doesn't really matter whether it's out or in. Even though, people may have judgments otherwise, you see, it's like... so, for example, guilt. It means symbolically it's an energy which is so devoid of the light, and it's an energy field. It's reflective. The thoughts that one tends to... You see, when you're in these energy fields, you tend to pull in thoughts from the collective related to the energy vibration you're at. So if you're at guilt, it's like you're tuned into the radio station from the collective. You have your individual, but you're pulling in those thoughts from the collective which resonate at the energetic vibration of guilt. Now, the thing with guilt is the symbolic word is punishment. So all types of thoughts will be pulled in from the collective which are reflective of punishment in some form. Maybe not using the word punishment, but they will be punishing thoughts. And either with some individuals it may be more that projected outward, so that one sees all the guilty people everywhere that deserve punishing and that are so bad, and probably secretly, if they were all executed, the world would be a better place. Or it could, for some it might be expressed more inward, you see. So, one is so bad and unworthy, then one should commit suicide or self-punish in a severe manner. With guilt it would be quite severely, because we're getting towards the lowest vibrations, guilt and shame, which are like, devoid of the light, the higher vibrations of light, and tuning into some of the darkest thoughts you can pull in from the collective. So often, and it can be both ways, of course, those politicians deserve to die, and after I've killed them with the gun, I'll kill myself, you see. So, so they can be dark in that way, or I'll just, some can be like, no, but the thoughts are reflective of that level of violence, if you like. Violence towards others or violence towards the destruction of self. Usually at those levels it's towards suicide or severe punishment. It might be unconscious. So someone, like I come from an addiction background, there are things like self-harming or cutting or all kinds of things can happen. But eventually, those darker thoughts of suicide can happen as well. So that's the thing. So that can be an overall state. Now, the thing with some individuals, though, will say, well, yesterday I was in sublime bliss, and today I have these very, very dark thoughts. I feel like, self-destroying myself or killing myself or something like that. So there can be these fluctuations. This can happen for a number of reasons, and there are a number of ways. Often, I would say that can happen due to grace, or that one has done a lot of spiritual work. And but there are still things which allow a huge fluctuation in one's vibration throughout the day. So, or throughout the week, if you like. So a couple of days feeling good and then plunging down. So that can happen with some people, I'm aware. So that's what guilt. So, the one thing to know with guilt is that it is a negative vibration. It has no usefulness whatsoever. Well, why do I say that? Because, there is, within the collective, there's this thing of like you're pleasing God by being guilty and punishing yourself. That happens to be quite a common thing within the collective of this world. So, I just stole somebody's donuts. I'm a really bad person. So I'm really bad. I'm so bad. How could I steal and eat those donuts from a good friend who trusted me? So then it's like, I'm so bad, and I'm vibrating at this guilt. And then it's like, well, I don't have the money to pay back. I should just kill myself so I don't inflict harm or something. So it's guilt. Or it could be like, I need to beat myself up severely, and then God will let me off the hook. So it's the projection of punishment, or that the universe requires punishment if you've done something that you project as bad. So the thing to know with guilt and shame is that when you're vibrating at that level, you're just tuned into a very negative realm, and all the thoughts will be tuned in from the radio, from that radio station. So none of them will be useful. And the way I sort of see it is like, my best thinking will not be when I'm feeling depressed or in guilt or shame. It's like, but when I sometimes dip into those lower levels, I know that my thinking is useless. That's the great thing of the spiritual teachers that I follow. It's like, forget trying to be creative or think of a solution right now. The one thing you need to do is start tuning in. I'll get into that in a few moments, of how I need to, I'll only be a function, I'll only have the thoughts reflective of the vibration I'm at. And here's the thing, I was chatting with some people, there's this thing which, these are just my views, but it's the thing, but there is research, spiritual research anyway, to back up what I'm saying, is that, taking action in the world, for me, out of the guilt, say I'm in guilt, I may have thoughts which I think may relieve the guilt. If I haven't done any spiritual work, I may have thoughts, like, I need to do this or that, or take that action. But if those actions for me do not raise my level of consciousness, do not raise my consciousness, bring in more light into my consciousness, for me they'd be a total waste of time. That's my view. Like I'm feeling guilty, and I try and make something up. What would be an activity that I could do that wouldn't raise my consciousness, generally speaking? Yeah, I could watch EastEnders, So that might be a solution. I might come up with guilt. Maybe I can just distract myself with EastEnders. But for me, that would not be it might be a thing that would come. I'll either kill myself or watch EastEnders, if it was something like that, you see. So that for me would be like, I know from all the years of work I've done in my spiritual teaching and my own experience, that would be like a totally useless thing to do. Because that's like coming out of usually either to numb out or self-harm or harm another is just the reflection of the energetic vibration. So the crucial thing I need to do is up my vibration. Forget any activity. This is how I would do it. Forget any activity if you're in those low vibrations, which is not to do with raising my vibration. Because if you're in that, or if you're prone to those dark thoughts and those dark energies, for me, the only thing I would bother doing is raising my vibration and put every other activity on hold. That's my personal thing, because it's a life and death situation. Doing things like, I'm going to just do something which is just a practical thing. I'm going to spend 10 hours researching how to fix my boiler. I'm going to spend the next 3 days on the internet planning to fix out. When you're in a negative state, for me, would not be the thing I would do. I'd use the cold water, or just not have water and get bottled water and work on my consciousness levels. So those type of activities, because what I am is just a reflection, the thoughts I have, the ideas I get, and also for me the thing of you see, at the ultimate level, there's just oneness. There is no such thing as me and you. So the ultimate good seemingly for myself, is to choose the ultimate good, which is that one and me and all are the same thing. It's the same choice. So hence, now I'll come into the things you can do, but guilt and shame. I'll be doing better if I'm angry. And then if I get to neutrality or peace or acceptance, that'll be really good. I'll be having a positive, a positive effect on the world. So it's like getting my state up. And this is one of the things when I speak to people, it's like, the people that I guide, the privilege of guiding, I always tell them, it's your vibration is the most important thing, and the way I have it in my own life is like, I want to do the activities, because I was exposed to like Hawkins' work, certain activities that will tend to raise your vibration a lot more, be more productive, to spend an hour doing a certain type of activity, shall we say. There's no such thing as an activity in truth, but, meditating or praying or self-inquiry or A Course in Miracles, then other activities. And everyone who's done a selection of spiritual activities, from your own experience, you'll know some activities are, to use something I used to use in the stock market, high leverage. The aim is, what's the goal when you're in these low vibrations, is to get to the highest vibration as quickly as possible. So then it becomes like one can go up slowly or one can go up quickly. I.e. do the actions and the activities that will leverage you, to get there. So for me, it's like, if you're in those states, I would cut out all non-essential things, because you're getting very dark thoughts. Cut out all non-essential things and just put yourself in what will bring your inner light up. Are not meaningless external activities, but spiritual activities that can, and certain spiritual activities, you'll know from your experience, will boost you up quickly, and certain activities will boost you up slowly. Some will be neutral, and some will be feeding you into the darker energies of either addictive or negative behavior, or numbing out through various things, TV, food, alcohol, whatever it may be. Or choosing activities, and I find this, choosing activities which are obviously not going to have any spiritual gain. So that, you have more leeway when you're in the higher vibrations. It's like you can do things which are neutral, but I think if you're in the guilt or shame as a dominant vibration, then I would, if someone asked me, I would tell them, just prioritize your spiritual activities until you're in a higher vibration, because it's not the world that fixes you. In fact, what you see of the world is just an inner reflection of your inner connection. And your inner thoughts are just an inner reflection of your inner connection. So I come from an addiction background, so like if I'm feeling like suicidal, you know, and I have the thought, well, a Ferrari will probably take me out of suicide, and I purchase a Ferrari. Actually, that was I didn't have the money to buy a Ferrari, but I remember in the early days of my spiritual work, you know, I had, and I was still having a lot of, it was still a time where I hadn't done so much spiritual work, and it was like, I got this news, I forgot exactly what the news was. It was something like I was going to need an operation. Yes, I was going to need an operation to fix a tube into my, I forgot what you call it. There's a cavity in there. You fix a tube in, it's going to stay on you. It's going to be hanging out all the time, so you can attach to a dialysis machine. And I needed to have that operation done. And there was like all these emotions came up. And I'd been like, you know, part of my form of distraction as a child was to buy gadgets. You know, and I was very into like hi-fi technology and video technology, and having the best sound system and the best TV and all that stuff. So I was really like, you know, I knew like, you know, like in every system there's ranking. This is a better amplifier, and that's a better speaker, and that's a better make for TV, and that's got that technology. So I just got this news. I wasn't really getting into that, but I suddenly became very interested after getting this news in the technology, and I thought, well, I should really get a projector to fill the whole of my room with a screen so that I can watch films. Like, probably I wanted to watch fantasy films in a different dimension, a different world, probably with swords and sorcerers, or with intergalactic stuff going on, the princesses that needed to be saved, and lightsabers and all kinds of things going on. So I thought and that's kind of obvious to me, because I wanted the biggest screen and the loudest noise and the best immersion experience to get me out of this feeling of terror, of what was happening to my life. So I just said to myself, I'm just going to call up the man and ask him what the price is, but I'm just going to say I've got the price, and then I'll say thank you very much and put the phone down. And he was a great salesman, or I don't know, I was in a pretty bad position. So he said, I'll give you a free screen if you buy now, but if you call back, you won't get the free screen. So it was like, well, you can't not buy it now. So I spent £1,799. I bought this projector, and I set it up in my room. I'm going off a bit on one. And, you know, this big screen was going to take me out of this world, and I spent this £1,700 on this. At the time, it's a long time ago, it was latest HD. HD was a new thing at that time, so it was like a big thing. Latest HD projector, and the screen was amazing, and the quality was amazing. It was like, I put Star Wars on, and it was like the whole like room was like the galaxy. And you had this, I mean, it was like literally the whole wall. It was like being right in the middle of a cinema. You know, you're right in there. So it was pretty amazing. And it lasted for about a few weeks. I was really enthusiastic about it. And then I just, you know, more or less never used it. So that was the thing. So that for me would not be a productive activity if you're feeling suicidal. You know, but, you know, so what are the things that are good to get up? You know, I mean, if you're a member of a 12-step group, using all those tools there, prayer, meditation, meetings, inventory, helping others. Otherwise, there's self-inquiry, which is going to the observer. So, like let's take guilt. Guilt. There's going to be thoughts related to guilt, or just dark thoughts in general. You know, bad me, bad choices, bad world, is not organized right. So all these kind of negative thoughts will be impinging, and there'll sometimes be darker thoughts of either self-punishment or self-harm or something like that. So the thing to do then with the self-inquiry is to know that you can apply it from both the Course in Miracles and from both the self-inquiry perspective, along with any other spiritual things you might be doing. So the Course in Miracles is just to remember. The other thing, oh yes, there's another tip which I personally use if I go into a low vibration. That is like, if I'm in a particularly low vibration, I'll just listen to like my teachers. My teachers are Dr. Hawkins or Muji. I'll either stick one or the other on, depending on the mood. Because they do actually start to tune me into a different vibration quite rapidly. Because my assumption, which I take 100%, it always is there, is that if I'm in a low state, all of my thinking is it's totally pointless. There's no useful thought that's going to come out when I'm in a negative state. You know, forget thinking, forget making plans, forget doing anything, forget using your mental reasoning. I just totally forget it. And apart from doing spiritual activities, you know, like going to spiritual groups, I will just usually if I'm just got some news or something, I'll stick on Hawkins and Muji and just listen to them, and then listening to those words, because those words are at the highest vibration. So these teachers are coming out of like the highest levels of enlightenment. So they're like vibrating, and the words and thoughts are just emitting. There's also some of the energy is transmitted. If you listen, you get some of their energy. It's even transmitted through the video recording. So then you start to slowly listen to what they're saying, and it pulls you up. You can see your thoughts you're starting to get different. I get different thoughts, you know, much more positive thoughts, and getting inspired as they sort of give pointings to that eternal place that cannot be touched. And then it retunes me to those experiences, you see. So it's quick, you know, it's grabbing me up, you see. So hence the thing, you know, I totally think it's not a useful idea to do your best thinking while you're in guilt, or even giving advice necessarily to other people while you're in a strong state of guilt may probably be not the best advice, or it may be said, and it might be good advice, but it might be said in an energy field which sounds quite punishing. You know, like eat your vegetables. You can say eat your vegetables like you mean to kill the person if they don't. You know, and we can say eat your vegetables with total unconditional love, you see. So even the words, you know, the energy field is more important at some level, you see, because anything that's said with love is not taken as being seriously. So that's the thing. Now, the thing with the oh yes, so that's the self-inquiry. You've got the thoughts. So what's observing the thoughts? Yeah, what's observing the thoughts? What observes all thoughts, even in the field of guilt? You know, but there's something observing thoughts which is not thought. So just keep contemplating on that. What's observing the thoughts? So it's not in the field of thoughts. You know, what happens when you're in guilt is, the thing is, when you're in guilt, the emotions and the thoughts seem very loud, you see. As you start to get to these higher levels of consciousness, they seem to be further away, and your sense of self seems to be this deep sense of peace and light and love. But as you drop down in your levels of consciousness, then the thoughts, it almost becomes like the thoughts and the feelings are what you are, you see, and there's no space. So people are like absolutely, they're usually very identified with the physical body, and the thoughts are very, very loud in consciousness, and the feelings are very, very strong. So that's what it's like, and that's has to be, because that's like, you could say there's no light coming in. So there's no, as you turn the light switch on, i.e. by detaching from all of this, which is not real at the ultimate level, as you turn the light on, they actually at the higher levels, they don't exist. No such thing as guilt exists in the light. It just doesn't exist. No such thing as a negative thought exists in the light. And also the identification as being limited to this little location in this little body in time also does not exist in truth. You see, none of those things exist. So as you turn the light up, but that's at the highest levels. The guilt is more or less at the lowest level. So you can go to the observers. What's observing the thoughts, which is not in thought, and then that will help you to detach. What observes guilt? Guilt is actually an object. So something is observing the guilt. You see, when you're heavily identified within it, usually a lot of people are not going to question, is there an observer of the guilt? They don't do it. So they're just stuck in it because you're unconscious. These thoughts are mine, and this thinking is my thinking, and this feeling is what I am, and this physical parameter in time is what I am. So it's just totally unconscious in the dark, believing one is guilty, full of dark thoughts. So just to know the teaching that something observes the thoughts, and then to contemplate and being the observer. You see, something is, the thing is you can't think about it. You see, even if you're listening on the video or you're here in the room, you see, if there is like something going to your thoughts, there's something here which is beyond thought, which is observing, which is thoughtless. So that's. Now, the thing to know, going a bit into self-inquiry, is that if you try and think about it, you're never going to get there, you see. So it's like a silent dropping, one just drops and, oh yes. It's not really even a, oh yes, because I have to vocalize it. There's a silent watcher, there's a silent witness, which has got no interest in the thoughts. And as you get there, the space and the limitlessness of the moment starts to reveal itself. So that's one way. The feeling, yeah. Now, guilt is a very heavy feeling. It's a very strong feeling. And again, but you just ask, what observes? There is an observer of guilt because it wasn't there 3 weeks ago. And then it suddenly built up and it got very intense and then it passes away. So it's a changing shape within the change of the world. But there is always an observer that has observed everything that can come and go, which is not coming and going, you see. So the eternal never comes and goes, it's a constant. So if a lump of guilt suddenly came up and then passed away, that is not what you are. Something observed that, which is not that, which means you can detach from it.
Do you feel like the feelings?
Pardon?
Would you feel like the feelings that I was mentioning?
Actually, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it's a very good point. So apart from the observer, the other tool to do is feeling out feelings. The feeling out feelings is just another route. It's a different route, but feeling the feelings is another route. So guilt. Then the key thing to know with guilt is to let go of labeling or making a story around the energy. So thank you for saying that. So guilt is a label. Guilt is a label. It's not, guilt has lots of associations in languaging around it. It's a label. Actually, you don't, so you're not even, you let go of the label, I'm experiencing guilt, because that's an ego label of what's arising in consciousness, yes? To make any story about what is just here now and letting full experience of that be experienced is all it is. And in fact, if there's no thought, if no energy goes to the field of thinking, it's just an energy field being experienced. Yeah. Now, as soon as you have thinking related to it, you start to label guilt. And this is how, you see, one has to be aware that thoughts are very powerful. You see, there's, the collective has subsets of words which it then quickly tries to put into shape, or it has words which will then spring a collection of a story around something. So the way to feel feelings is to know that the more you're in thought, you're giving energy or identification or meaning to thoughts, you're in greater resistance to the isness of now, to allowing just the universe to be what it is without resistance. Yes, because the ego then creates a sense of an individual trying to understand or control or make an imprint of what's going on. So if there's no thought, that individual would disappear and it would just be the experiencing of whatever is happening, which experientially would just be the allowing of the energy. So how it would go? How would that go if you're doing it? Well, as you start off, you let go. You you have the inner silent intention that you're not going to even touch any thought or put any label on what's being experienced moment by moment, you see. So I'll explain how it would work what I'm doing. It would be like there's some energy possibly going to the thought field, and then there seems to be just an energetic vibration that's here. Now the energetic vibration is what you understand through experiencing is that as you start to label things, they start to go into that contraction, you see. So it's just being with the energy, and then the thoughts try and emerge, like, and then one quickly. So as you start to, it's like there's the energy, and it's like becoming one with the energy, and giving zero attention to any thought. And thoughts will try to emerge and grab attention, but the thing is to disidentify from any thought that's just about emerging. You just try and catch it on the split second it emerges, because it should be. The intention is it's a thoughtless activity of just experiencing the energy without any attention to thought. So as soon as there's a hooking into a thought, then it's like unhook and just be in the isness or the experiencing of now without any label. Even guilt is a strong label, not even that. Now then, it might seem like the guilt is in a location, but you just be with that for a while and then let go of the location. So let's say guilt. Maybe I'm feeling guilt in the body. Yeah. So one is just allowing the guilt, and then as soon as a thought is picked up, let it go. Eventually one will get into resonance with the energy and will start to get a stronger intuitive awareness. One is just with the pure energy and not in the field of thoughts. So that becomes easier after a while. And it becomes automatic, just detached from any thought that tries to poke itself in.
What if it's painful?
Pain is a label. It's a good question. It's my favourite topic, pain, physical suffering and illness. Pain is a label.
It's physical pain, but it's an emotion of shame and guilt that is coming in the body as physical pain, isn't it? It can do.
Yeah.
It feels painful.
Yes. If pain is coming in the body, you see, the components of, pain is actually, I talk slightly different. Let's say you're feeling the energy and then there's a sharp pain in the heart or something, which can happen. But again, you're carrying on the practice that you're doing with the guilt, with the pain. Equally, it's the same principle. See, pain is a label. And I was coming on to this next bit, which is you feel the energy vibration of it, and it seems to be located in the body. Yeah. Then, as you start to get in resonance and you're not going into the thoughts too much, it'll start to become a little bit easier to just be in resonance with the energy. Then you want to let go, not with your thinking, of just location, you see. So something is subtly holding on, this is happening in this area. So it becomes, as you've done this practice, you'll see, at a certain point, you've been with the energy. And in the beginning, the energy seems very restricted and contracted, like the guilt might be just like a big heavy lump in this area. But after you've been in resonance with it, it loosens up a bit. Then, so it's starting to get more diffuse and the edges are starting to blur out. Then one is intuitively trying to, it's like an inner intent, let go of even the idea that it's in location. So you're just letting it this energy become more like it's not really like that, a thin vapor. It's like the energy is dissolving out of it. And then if you're just with the energy of that dissolving, eventually you go into either profound states of peace or even higher. And I've done that and I've had that. But sometimes I've had in terms of pain, this is one of my favourite ones, was when I used to have acute. This is it's the same thing for feelings. Acute pain, gout pain in my foot, where the toes would swell up and there'd be excruciating pain. So in the beginning, I'd let go of all labelling and then just be with the energetic vibration of it. And that would take, and then it would start to get more diffuse, and then let go. Even the idea that it's in a location is just me labelling. that such a thing as location. And then it becomes more diffuse. You give it permission just to dissolve into nothing, basically. And then one goes into peace or bliss. And I used to have that. Pain is quite intense. Your feet have just swelled up very quickly and your skin's stretched. There's horrific pain. So it took me, in the early days when I was applying the practice, it took something like 3 to 4 hours. 3 to 4 hours. And it would gradually get less intense and more diffuse. And then it would disappear and then there'd be peace. And it would also heal a bit. So I was able to walk around. All the pain, it was like one had deleted that pain just by being connected to the light, you see, and the peace. It doesn't exist there. There's no such thing as location. There's no such thing as pain. There's no such thing as negative energy. So you could do the feeling. Is that clear? Feel the feelings with guilt. But also a very good question. What if you're feeling? If it's like there's feeling of the energy of guilt, and then suddenly there's an acute pain somewhere. Now, if it's louder and it's taking all the thing, then you just shift to applying the same principle to that. And that will dissolve, because you're dissolving everything through feeling the feelings until there's nothing there.
Because I'm saying that the guilt is pain, the shame is pain, is it?
Oh, I thought you...
pain in the body. That's what I'm saying. I did it last week in this park bench and I felt a huge amount of pain in my body.
Yes.
And so I cut the supply off to the thoughts.
Yes.
And I just let it be, and it was very, very sharp and painful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was an emotion. But it was in my body as physical pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you felt it out. Yes. Yeah. That's what you did.
Before I did it pure.
Yes.
Yeah.
You break. You see, you don't want to buy any belief system when you're in these. So as soon as it, like the label pain.
But it hurt me. It hurt my body.
Yeah, well, you want to let go of the label, the body as well. You see, and I would sit upright if one can.
Yeah.
I've done it with panic attacks and pain and gout pains, and because if I go into if I go into a place where I can't be upright, I'm not able to be fully conscious. It's like the consciousness of allowing it to be experienced dissolves it. But for me, to go to sleep, I would miss that opportunity, because it's I wouldn't have. It would have been an avoidance of experiencing that energy. So it's like in transcending it, through facing it and dissolving it until it passes. What one makes huge inroads. So it's also to know that everything is just manifest. There's nothing consciousness cannot heal. There's nothing the ultimate light cannot do. I mean, I know that to be true. When I went into Muji with a horrific gout attack and I had that white light spiritual experience, it was totally gone. That pain in my foot. I actually, it was like blinding ecstasy and bliss afterwards. Total non-recollection of pain or suffering. It was totally wiped out. I was in a totally different dimension of absolute joy and bliss and presence.
Could you walk perfectly?
I could walk perfectly.
Because you were limping when you went in.
I was extreme agony and pain and limping. It didn't even enter my consciousness that anything was wrong. There was no even thought of that. And I walked perfectly fine. It was more or less instantly healed by accessing that level of light. So it totally obliterated out and healed the body in a split second. And it was forgotten. Everything was being orchestrated by the universe. I think the Sabbir personality wasn't even there. He did come in later on. But it was like I came in on a dark day in physical agony, and it was like a bright sunny day to what was revealed afterwards. So it didn't occur to me that it seemed to be a dark and dismal day full of pain when I went in. And it was like everything was in technicolor brilliance. So having had those experiences, and the teachers have said that, to allow the experiencing of those things, you don't want to label them, because labeling it, if I have, you don't want to label I've got pain here, So that means I'm going to get this thing.
Maybe if I call it sharpness.
Yeah, you can call it, you don't want to call it anything.
Like a jabbing.
Yeah, so jabbing, then you let the jabbing go immediately as a label. And you just allow the experiencing of it.
Feel it.
Yeah. Just allow the energy without labeling. Because labeling has great destructive power as well. You know.
So therefore it's not hurting me anymore, you're saying. Like it's hurting me, but then when I do that...
Well, you see, what will happen is the pain is there, and instantly your ego will make a label and a story about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm pain, I'm going to die, you know, call the doctor. I'm on camera right now, but what I would do, I'm not prescribing this, everyone must do whatever they want to do. I'm not a medical doctor or anything. But I knew that I wanted to transcend everything, not take a remedy. You know, I had that intuitive knowledge. I might do in some scenarios, but I had that intuitive knowledge that to heal, you know, I need to let go of these energy blocks within, these thought systems and these feelings. And so I you know, the more you practice, and I've had a lot of practice with pain, a lot of practice, surgery pain, you know, pains in the feet, all kinds of aches and things. And the miraculous has happened, you know. You know, I haven't had a gout attack in many, many years. I haven't had pain like that in many years. So it's just you become almost like the consciousness becomes immune, or hardly ever has it, because you've transcended it. You've transcended it without using a quick fix, you see. So you get to these levels of consciousness. So what I'm trying to say is, the way I contextualize it, it's an illusion. It gains power by you labeling it. And by you not labeling it and allowing it without labeling to be fully allowing it, it'll start to dissolve. And then, so the attitude, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I coined it as a joke. I call it the spiritual warrior attitude. You know, because when I was in active addiction, I didn't want to feel anything. You know, and that led me to the darkest levels of always obliterating it. So to get to the highest levels, you have to have a 180 attitude to feelings. You know, literally, and that is my attitude through many years of cultivation. Is like when any emotion or sensation in the body emerges, especially if it's a strong sensation, then you know, if it's a strong sensation, I will just sit with it, you know, and instantly allow it, not do an activity to distract myself. And that includes, like, you know, if someone, you know, like, I'll share a story in physical pain. You know it, you guys know it, but I'll illustrate the point. It's like, I knew Hawkins had shared his story of, he was allergic to pain, to anaesthetic, and he cut his thumb off, and then he went in for an operation, and he just told the doctor he knows something, he does hypnosis or whatever, and he just allowed himself to experience what was going on in the operation without resistance. Without resistance is what we've just been talking about. Don't label anything that's going on, and 100% allow the experiencing of what is with zero resistance. Full, like, you know, nothing in the consciousness is resisting. Full experiencing of what is without labeling. And he was very advanced at doing it. I mean, he was one of the most advanced spiritual teachers. So don't resist. And then he went off into sublime bliss. And I also had... so I'm just sharing these things to change your belief systems about pain. You know, because the thing is, like, pain, you got to do something. So he went on sublime bliss, you know, while, you know, they were literally chopping bits of him off with no anaesthetic. So I also had a thing where once, in the early days when I was exposed, many years ago, I had to have emergency treatment for high potassium levels, which meant a huge needle about this big. And you guys think I'm joking, but it was a really, really big needle. And those little needles that they give it when taking the blood out are like that. You know, this was like that. You know, and they were going to, like, plunge it in. I thought, well, if Hawkins can do that, I will just 100% be present and experience everything. It's like the consciousness, like you want to experience everything. That's like the inner attitude without labeling. 100%. Yes, I want to experience this. And it went in, and they were pushing it in, and I was like being 100% present. I'm using words, but it's like welcoming. Even if it was going to be like feeling like they were going to, someone's just like plunging a knife in, you just to welcome it without resistance, any inner resistance. And as they were plunging it in, I started to, I was going off into heavenly bliss. I was starting to lose consciousness. You know, I was going off, I was going to the sublime place. And then, you know, the staff all went mad and thought that I was diabetic. And so started to wake me up and put sugary drinks in front of me, say, drink this. So I would have preferred they left me alone. But I probably wouldn't be very good if I was like slumping down while they're trying to like plunge a thing in. But it worked, you know, I experienced the same thing. If you, in fact, if you didn't resist right now, this is something interesting to know. Whatever was happening, even if you're going into a car crash or someone's about to saw your, sorry, it's a bit graphic, saw your thumb off or something, you're going to, you know, chopping the vegetables and make a mistake. You know, and so it's like, if you were not to resist that, within a split second you'd be in instant bliss. It's only you only experience what you resist. Life only happens because of resistance. And the level of resistance, each person, the lower level, like guilt, is basically a person who's resisting life enormously. They're not allowing. Their level of thinking and labeling and the level of avoidance of their feelings and suppression of the feelings is at such an, it's like extreme resistance. And so the feeling of separation, of being stuck in a body with dark feelings and dark thoughts, is like they're in the darkness, quite literally. And the person who is at enlightenment is in the absolute, limitless, eternal, timeless light, because there is zero resistance. And in fact, when you're learning these practices, you'll start to, if you apply these practices, you'll have experiences, like I've had many, of like being in like the one I just demonstrated with the needle, a very terrifying, seemingly experience, but then there was that inner attitude, that commitment to experience without label, any type of resistance, to welcome it, and not to have any kind of inner resistance, zero inner resistance, to welcome it, whatever it may be.
Would that resistance take the form of thoughts?
Yes. Well, that's a major resistance. There's the thinking resistance, and then there is like a kind of an inner shrinking away.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a hunching. It's like somehow it's not labeled.
Recoiling.
You're recoiling.
Yeah.
You know, it's like somehow energetically you're recoiling from that needle being plunged in. No, it's like 100% allowing, relaxed. You know, in fact, welcoming. It's almost like bring it on. Yeah. So I had that, and I nearly lost consciousness into bliss. It was exactly what Hawkins said. And now, if there's anyone in this room, or anyone watching this video, if you stop resisting in this split moment, no matter how much agony or dark thoughts, if you could just let go and have this attitude of don't attach to thoughts and allow experientially, if that's done in the right way, if you keep trying that, you will have profound immediate experiences. So you can go from the pits to like bliss in a moment, which I went from like terror and then applied that. But I've been working on that, to have that attitude. And it's like every opportunity which is going to be difficult, to immediately, as you practice, that already becomes your automatic attitude. Hey, huge needle, I need to go into zero resistance mode. I can't indulge my thoughts, and I can't allow my body to shrink away from this. I'm going to like allow whatever is experiencing 100% with zero resistance. And it's exactly what Hawkins said. Now, that can be done at the lowest levels, but each time, if you adopt that, that's quite a useful question. If you adopt that, that is my attitude to life. Now, when life is easy, it's easier to let that attitude go. But generally speaking, if I know I'm about to be hit by a car, or a bus is coming to me, I haven't got time to run out of the way, or you know, a chainsaw murderer emerges, runs into the room, and I'm not going to get away, then I know it, because I practice it, I would go into that. Because to resist it with my thoughts and my body and my energy, I know it would be excruciating. But to not resist it, probably, I've experienced it. They can be stabbing you and you're gone. You're in bliss, you see. Because there's a thing with those opportunities, and I understood with Hawkins, you're experiencing the situation is 100% dependent on how much you resist or how much you allow the situation. There isn't, even if it's the most horrific seeming thing in the world, if you don't resist, you can actually go off into instant bliss. Probably even, I won't go into the esoteric side, but you can actually let go of all limitation and you're off. So you don't have to experience, whatever it is. So if you practice that, I'm pretty sure if anyone practices this in every difficult opportunity, what I've just said, very soon you'll start to get these experiences. We've had lots of people have them, yeah.
Once you've been through one of those, have you reduced your quota that's left in your suppressed cylinder of pain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You become more and more immune to pain. It takes a bigger thing before it'll affect you.
But you said there's a certain amount that you come in with. If I have one experience of letting it go, have I now got less in my bank that I have to vaporise?
Yes.
Am I a bit more free forever?
Yes.
It's not that pain comes and goes, it comes and goes, it's that it goes and then it reduces what's in the bank.
That's right.
Yeah.
It reduces, so there's a reservoir of suppressed feelings, and each time you feel it out, it's a finite amount, And anyone who's done sustained spiritual work will realize they tend to fluctuate, usually speaking, they tend to fluctuate at higher and higher levels. They usually don't drop down to the bottom. And that's been my experience. I do fluctuate, but I haven't gone down to those very, very dark levels. I just haven't.
Does that mean that you've emptied your cylinder?
Yeah, it means I've emptied a lot of my cylinders. So the fluctuation is now at a much higher level, and I haven't gone down. I don't go down to those dark levels any longer. So, yeah. What was the question? Say the question again. I was going to say something else.
I like to think that the pain just doesn't come and go and come and go. I like to think that if I have a session of feeling out my feelings, that I've now reduced my quotient that I came in with.
Yes.
Because you said that there's a reservoir.
Yes.
And now I vaporise, say, 5% of it, for example.
Yeah.
Is that right to say?
That's correct. Yeah.
It
it will never come back so long as you're devoted to the spiritual path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you make a reverse option
anything can
to start indulging in thoughts more and start doing activities which mean greater suppression, then you'll just be restocking what you've just taken out. So
did have the transcended masters have nothing in their cylinders?
No.
Nothing.
No.
They're negative cylinders, under 200.
No. I mean, they're calibrating. I mean, they are at the level, at enlightenment. There is no ego left. What does the ego mean? Everyone is. I mean, we wouldn't have an enlightened teacher listening to this because they wouldn't be bothered to. So most people are identified with being in a location, and their thoughts being self. Yes. So that is what I call a limited identification. You haven't transcended limits. The ego is normally in spiritual literature is called the ego body identification. That's what it's often called. The identification with thoughts and the physicality as the real self. You see, so that is a definition of the extreme vast majority of humanity, which are 100% convinced they are their thoughts, and this physical thing that they are locked into is what they are. So that is not enlightenment. The enlightened teachers, and also if you're an advanced spiritual seeker, check out what I'm just saying. When you get those timeless, eternal, present moments, if you were to be able to look back, there'd be no sense of you being a thought as yourself, and you would have no sense of this physical location being what you are. There would be a limitless, eternal, timeless presence beyond thought. That would not be your experience in those sublime moments. Then quickly the ego goes, no, really, I'm a thinking, physical, located thing. So you disregard just the experience of the limitless. So the enlightened, that is that. That is, they are not limited. Their consciousness is not limited. You know, like when Hawkins was enlightened, he described it something like this. There was a body in the room, and there was witness. It was like there was an expanded consciousness, and people. It was just observed that people were talking to that body as if it was him. You know, because he wasn't in that location.
He was out of body.
He wasn't out of body.
No.
He was in the expanded, beyond location thing. Not out of body. That's something totally different. Because when you go out, when your spirit jumps out of body, it's still in location. So like you hear the operating theatres the most. So it's like they give you the anaesthetic, and then your spirit, which is not enlightenment, jumps out of body and watches everything from above. It's in location.
Is that not a good thing? It's not enlightenment?
No, that is not enlightenment. That's you know, if you're a twat.
Dummy guide to enlightenment.
Pardon?
Dummy's guide to enlightenment.
If you're a twat, no, that you wouldn't be enlightened when you went back into your body. You'd still be a twat. Twat is slang for a dumb person or something. So it doesn't raise your consciousness.
It can be a spiritual guidance, though. I was in an ashram in India, and in Shavasana, the corpse
You okay?
goes at the end.
We're on camera. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
I had a profound experience, out-of-body experience in Shavasana, and what it showed me was that there was nothing to be afraid of in death, that life or experience was continuous and was beneficent and positive, and it was such, never experienced anything quite that profound prior or since, but you know, it really encouraged me to continue to pursue a spiritual path, and that also the consciousness extended beyond the body,
Yes.
for sure,
Yeah.
which I hadn't had any sense of before that.
So that doesn't sound like out of body. That
That-
sounds like what you're talking about, the eternal.
Yes. Yeah. No. I'll now. Thank you for saying that. There's a difference between having an out of body and a spiritual awakening at the same time, and just having an out of body and still remaining at the same level of consciousness. So, like, typically, if you're in a spiritual retreat, or you have a out of body experience where you go into the light or experience the limitless at the same time, that's not what I call just an out of body experience. That's also mixed with the spiritual experience. So the spiritual experience and the out of body, they'll be beneficial together. But you can have someone like who's just a thief and a drunk, and just be on top of their body for a few minutes and then go back into it, and they would be exactly the same.
Okay.
You know, so so the out of body, apart from, and probably the ego would then rationalize a reason to negate that experience, you know, as well. But it's a different thing when there's spiritual intent or there's a spiritual energy rise with that. Then that becomes transformative. This often happens even with, the near-death spiritual experiences are quite popular nowadays, the books written by people, and they often go into that sublime light. So when they come back in, because they've accessed the light, their whole experience in the world and their level of consciousness jumps up enormously because they've gone into the light, and then they come back. So their whole recontextualization, because they're now at another vibration. But then you can get a drunk on an operating theatre, go out of body, see the body, and then go back in, and really there will be no difference. Not really any difference, you know. And so there's not really any illumination or change in the behaviour of that person. But yes, if you're going off into limitless places, especially if you're in a spiritual community, it's also a spiritual awakening. So I forgot, we're talking about something.
Emptying a cylinder.
Yes, so yeah, as you let it go, and that should be the intention, to fully let go of everything that's in the cylinder, so that
That you don't ever revisit it again, you're free of.
yes, if you pursue the Course in Miracles and enlightenment, you'll also be letting go of your thoughts. So the Course in Miracles, so the other thing, with letting go of guilt, yes, so there's self-inquiry, there's feeling the feelings, which we discussed. Then there's texts like the Course in Miracles lessons, which don't so much focus on the observer, even though some of the lessons do talk about detached observing. So that's, you always pick that up. But there's feeling the feelings, not labelling and allowing without resistance, both at a thought level and energetic level of experiencing what is. And they will just diffuse out and evaporate away. You keep doing that. I've had serious illnesses just vanish through just keep applying. Because the ego likes to say it's a medical condition, or you can't just let go of anything. But, if you just, often something happens, it's not guaranteed, but when there's no more symptom left, my experience has been also, you don't need it. It's like, if you keep filling out, if you're asthmatic and you keep filling out that breathless feeling, like with the thing I've said, don't call it asthma, just allow it 100%. And then I was eventually discharged from the asthma clinic. I didn't have the symptoms any longer. So just because I share that just because the ego likes to say this is not possible, or you have to think about it, or there's a medical thing. You have to let all of that go.
Yeah, like how, for example, asthma might be hereditary.
Yeah, that's
that's a belief that might
yeah.
could limit you, couldn't it? So, well, my parents had it.
Yeah.
So
Any limiting belief will either hamper or stop it. You must hold on to. That's why zero label. It's like a zero label tolerance. Zero tolerance labeling policy.
yeah.
Because as soon as you label, all thoughts are limits.
But there are genetic predispositions.
That's a limit. That's a limit. Yeah.
But there are.
That's limited thinking. Just by holding that belief.
But say if it's not a belief and it's a scientific fact, and let's say there are people who have certain, chromosomes in their body that are likely to repeat 1 or 2 generations on.
Okay. So you've got a strong belief in the medical system.
Well, I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't, but
I'm joking.
Making a distinction between fact and belief.
Well, so according to I'll speak in the language of the Course, but according to Course in Miracles, this whole world is an illusion. It's a shared collective projection of seemingly separate individuals in a world of time and space. Yes, and there are belief systems which manifest within both the personal belief systems and within the collective belief systems, which create this seemingly separated world. One perceives the separated world based on how much spiritual work, whether it's a benign world or whether it's a world full of victims and perpetrators. So, and the belief systems have great power within the illusion to create. Now, just because I have a degree in biochemistry, but for me those are just a collection of belief systems held within the collective scientific community. That's all it is. It's not. It's nothing.
But there's a high frequency of people with X chromosome, and it's a disease chromosome, and it carries on to the next generation. And if we know that there's data to support that there are large numbers of people who have this carrier.
Yeah, I mean,
is that a belief?
That all of that is beliefs.
Who believe that though?
Well, I mean, the scientists believe that. They believe that their assessments and their experiments are the truth. Some scientists are actually quite open-minded to the type of stuff, if you get into quantum mechanics. And, the spiritual people will point to the Heisenberg principle and quantum mechanics, that actually the whole world of science is based on, we're going to break your belief on science, you see. It comes out of what's called Newtonian science, of cause and effect in the world. This thing out there causes that out there. So this chromosome, this asthma chromosome creates asthma susceptibility. That's cause and effect, yeah. So, and then they have empirical evidence. I was also a pharmaceutical analyst, so I know how they do research for all their drugs as well. But all of that is not real. Those are just belief systems. If you believe something with 100%, it's very powerful.
I know this girl who's about 21.
Yes.
Her father had kidney problems.
Yes.
And I think he had a kidney removed.
Yes.
And she's been told that she has this same condition.
Yes.
And she's going to have her own kidney removed by the age of 30, although there's no illness. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a strong belief.
And there are plenty, you hear it in the media, don't you? People having their breasts removed because their mother had a type of breast cancer, and so they're advised to have it removed preventatively. There's plenty of that in the papers.
Yeah, well, you believe that stuff, and you do it. Okay, so I'm getting on. So you don't want to buy these beliefs of anything to do with genetics, anything to do with things. So the Heisenberg principle, I think you all guys know, many of you know the Heisenberg principle. So, it's very transformative if you see the Heisenberg principle in the right way. So all scientists believe this causes that in the world. That's causality. If I give you this drug, you'll get well. And this genetics creates this condition. That's causality of a type of object or form within the world having the power to create something else. Now, the Heisenberg principle was that if a scientist observes phenomena, just the observation of the phenomena changes the phenomena into particles or waves. Now, this then opens the door that consciousness has an effect on what happens. This then alters, if you see it the correct way, that actually it might be true that consciousness is true that consciousness has an effect. But with that scientific experiment, it seems to have a very small effect. But it seems like, actually, this atom, like let's say Newtonian, so like a billiard ball, this atom, we know if it hits this ball, or this pool ball, if it hits this ball in physics, with this velocity and this mass, it'll make the ball move this far. And we've done hundreds of experiments to show that's true. So it's a scientific fact. It's based on empirical scientific evidence. But if you had the measuring equipment, if you had a machine do that thing, and the velocity was there, and then you just had one difference, which was a human being witnessing the thing, that's all. But exactly the same velocity, there would be a difference in the results.
What kind of human being?
Any human being. For a phenomenon to be witnessed, it then changes what would have been recorded. Bear with me. So, but that's just an average, scientists aren't very evolved. You see, so then you take, what if an enlightened teacher who would let go of everything witnessed something? So then you start to see how the miracles happened around those who are enlightened. Because they have no blocks, the power that creates in this universe is not thoughts and objects and chromosomes, it's consciousness. This is the power of what's bringing everything into the manifest world. This whole world is mired and programmed to look for causality. If I take this vitamin pill or this gene means that I'm getting that. That's causality. And actually, in truth, causality doesn't exist. A chromosome doesn't have any power to do anything. But consciousness, believing that, has all the power to do that. So forget any belief system within this world, because if you were to let go of that idea and that label of any such thing as chromosomes creating destiny, and just go into the light and delete that totally, that's where the real power is. You know, that's where the real power is.
I was going to say, hence the placebo effect.
Hence the, yes, thank you. That's right. Yes, the placebo. And, you know, like drugs, you know, like I said in another video, you know, if we got like a medical doctor and we said he was the highest professor in Harvard, and he came in and he put a white coat on him and say, like, take these pills every day, it's got a 99.99% ability to cure your cancer, your life-threatening cancer, you'd find a high percentage of those people, it's just a sugar pill, would recover from cancer because of the power of that. So the scientists go, oh, we've got a drug, and we've done clinical trials on 3 sets of 1,000 people, and statistically, you know, this is a good drug with an 80% cure rate. But even if you get someone and they believe this medical professor, and you just give them a sugar pill, you know, you'll get a high percentage of them will recover from life-threatening cancer. So the power is not in the chromosome. In fact, chromosomes have 0 power. You see, you're so invested in these belief systems of chromosomes and science, and this has got to happen. And in fact, all power emerges out of consciousness. And whatever you believe, you could say your karmic makeup as to what your chromosomes are, and is just part of your energetic makeup as one comes into experiencing this world. There's these energy patterns that one is coming in with. But no matter what the energy pattern is, whether you call it a thought or a chromosome, you know, it's like the power is not there. The power is not in the thought. Even though if you hold a belief, it seems to be able to manifest that. Or if you hold an energetic pattern, say within the chromosomes, it seems to, but actually that can all be deleted. And where the power is in the consciousness, is in the agreeing to the collective. And if you deleted that in light, then that would no longer, you just picked up a nightmarish idea of a chromosome from the collective. It doesn't exist in truth. Just do not, yep.
How did Hawkins work with his patients that were ill to overcome their illnesses? I mean, perhaps you could say a few words about it so everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yes. Well, the reason, you know, I've been doing the Course in Miracles, I forget now, I can't remember, I mean 8, 9, 10 years. Every day I've been doing a lesson, more or less, you know, from the Course in Miracles. And because he rated it highly for releasing all belief systems, you know, totally deprogramming every single program you've picked up from this world. And that was a lot of programming there, the defense of the medical system. That chromosomes mean I must have this because it's scientific. I do understand that, I was from that background. I've deleted that. Consciousness has the power, and anything can be deleted. And I'll go on to that. But he said something else, which I'll just explain his miracle, which totally what, you know, meant that I knew that consciousness can do absolutely anything if you delete it. Because he had a blocked eustachian tube, and every time he used to go in an airplane, he used to have this horrific pain, and he was just you know, cancelling the belief and doing the Course in Miracles, and it stopped. But he had the X-ray of it, you know, when he had it, because he'd had the X-rays. And one day a long time later, he had another X-ray done, and the bone had actually, you know, shifted in his skull to open up, you see. So literally, just by cancelling the belief, the bones like rearranged themselves. I thought that's so incredible. Because you think, well, yeah, maybe being in the light can do quite a lot, but it can't like take your bones in a different direction, you know, and grow normally. But you're just cancelling it. So, you know, that's the immense power that's available. But if you believe it, like it's impossible, or it's medical, therefore it's impossible. But there's no power in medicine. Here's the thing, that, you know, antibiotics, there's no power, it's a dead thing. Yep.
I'm quite interested in traditional herbal plant use,
Yes.
and you know, people used to know what plants cured what
Yes.
illnesses,
Yes.
and what do you think about that? So,
Well-
for example, if you have a headache or you're feeling sick, if you take something called medisweet,
Yeah.
you know, that can, I think that's the plant, that can make you better. And the, I guess the indigenous wisdom of what plants would cure what ailments.
I think, you know, whatever is believed works. And I have nothing against taking medicines. I take medicines myself. You know, like I shared this in one of my stories, which I sort of, is true. I had 13 medications, and this is answering your question as well, because it applies to medicines as it does to herbs. I had my transplant done, and I was given 13 medication, which is normal. These are pills you have to take, you know, all kind of, you know, immunosuppressants, stop things to thicken the goo in your stomach so you don't burn holes in it through taking too much medication. Yeah, omeprazole. So you just have enough mucus, so that you're taking so much toxic medicines in your stomach, it secretes enough so you don't burn a hole in it. 13 medications, some of them extremely strong, and that's normal for a transplant. Just had a transplant. You're supposed to live like on 2 carrier bags worth of medicines every time you leave anywhere. I had 13, and you say, I haven't got, you know, while you still believe them, they work, you see, so you might as well take them. But, you know, all I did was I cancelled my belief. So if you believe something will work, it will work. You don't have to be at the level of enlightenment, and it'll be practical to take those things if they're working for you. And until you delete the belief systems around them, it's actually a practical thing to do. Because if you haven't cancelled your belief, it's worthwhile taking some herbs. Once you've cancelled your belief, you no longer need herbs. But anyway, I'll get on to that. So here's the way I did it, which is the practical, useful way in the world, is, you know, these are the 13 medications you need to take a day. And I just popped them all in my pill, just like the doctor told me to. But I cancelled my belief in any adverse side effects from the medications. So whatever I believed to be a positive, or whatever I was plugged into the collective, unconsciously believing that these were good, I just cancelled my belief in adverse side effects. So I took them, popped them in the mouth. They cause nausea, burn holes in your gut. It's cancelled all of that. So I still believe, and so because it's the belief, it's not the medication, it's the belief. So I popped them in, and within, I think it's 2 to 3 years, yeah, I was down to 1 medication. And I found this quite astronomical. It was the same day, actually. It was like the universe was like, I think the universe wanted me to share this message. I was down just to 1 medication. I went in to see my transplant consultant, and I was on more or less the minimum dose of immunosuppressant, and all the other 12 medications were gone. I was just on this tiny dose. I was a transplant patient. And he said to me, Sabbir, you know, I don't know of anyone in this hospital with a transplant that's taking less medication than you. Yeah? And I'd been doing this counselling for 2 or 3 years, and they'd all gone down to 1 at the lowest level. And then it was the same day, I went to the pharmacist, and she made a joke that she'll put the pharmacy out of business. You know, because I wasn't taking it, because everyone's like, you know, 15 scripts, and I was having like a tiny dose of like one medication. So I've just said that. That's the great power, you know, so it's on video, and it's the great power, and it's trying to break your belief that it's not possible, or that the scientists say it's impossible.
Did I hear you say I take medicines now?
Yes, I take immunosuppressant. I take immunosuppressant.
The same small dose.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, and they have given a tiny dose of a blood pressure medication now after the 3 years, but just those 2, tiny dose and that. So yeah, it hasn't gone back up. So yeah, you're going to say something? Yeah. So you just have to eradicate all these belief systems.
What about babies and children, if they're not well, for example, and they haven't got the power of thinking yet, or they haven't got the power yet to cancel beliefs?
Yes.
Or maybe you do even have beliefs.
Or maybe even to have beliefs. You know, I guess I'm thinking about vaccines and things like that. Or if, like, that poor baby, Charlie Gard, that was so ill.
Yes.
But obviously he's too young to cancel any beliefs. It's just the parents who are kind of, you know, responsible for his health choices.
Yes.
What of that situation?
Yeah, you can cancel other people's beliefs
On their behalf?
on their behalf. Yes.
How would you do that?
I was shown the great power because I didn't even bother trying that until recently, and so it's very, very easy. I mean, I'll answer your question and give a look. It's very easy. Just say a baby's about to have a vaccine, and you know that there's a 5% statistical medical research that says a 5% chance they'll become autistic. I'm making it up. You know, you just say God did not create MXX vaccine with that creates Alzheimer's or whatever it is. Autism. So you just say that, and then you'll be cancelling the belief for that baby on that baby's heart. It's very powerful. It's not. I mean, it depends on a lot of critical factors of whether it will work or not, which I can go into. But I was always cancelling my own stuff. It didn't come to me that I would cancel anybody else's stuff. And then one day, my mother had like edema, her legs had swelled up, and she'd gone to the GP, and the GP said, "Well, you've got heart failure. There's absolutely nothing we can do." And she told me this, and I thought, that's quite an insensitive thing to say. There's nothing we can do, just go away, kind of thing, with her edema, because it's her heart failure and there's nothing that can be done. So then it just popped into my head that I would use lesson 14 of Course in Miracles on her behalf. God did not create edema in my mother, so it is not real. God did not create edema in my mother, so it is not real. I just applied it. You know, I realized that the universe has never created anything such called edema. It doesn't exist in the absolute light. No such thing has ever existed. So you just blot it out and like, God did not create it. And, you know, because I've been doing it for a while, with the way I did it on myself, with absolute certainty, that, excuse me,